The original Dante's Inferno was a solid third-person action-adventure game that was released in 2010 for the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and even the PSP. The game was developed by Visceral Games, who are behind the Dead Space franchise, Army of Two, The Devil's Cartel, The Simpsons game, and so much more. The game was given a huge marketing push and was done by the publisher of the game, EA. Commercials were shown during the Super Bowl, and I would say very successful viral marketing was achieved in terms of getting people interested in the title. Also, it helped that the game was loosely based on the Divine Comedy by Dante, more specifically the Inferno section, which most people, if they have not read, are at least familiar with. And all of this did result in the game being moderately to well received by critics and was accepted by fans who appreciated the gameplay and its similarities to the God of War franchise. So why didn't this game get a sequel, and why was it cancelled by Visceral Games? We will get into all of that and why Dante's Inferno 2 was cancelled. As always, all the sources, if still available, will be in the description down below. Let's start with the end of the original. Dante is taken to Purgatory and then remove the tapestry, and we hear Lucifer's laughter in the background. The tapestry turns into a snake, which fans have speculated implies that Lucifer has manifested into the snake and will continue to follow Dante and get his revenge. Then the game cuts to a black screen with "to be continued" text on the bottom. After this, fans started to rightfully speculate that the next game would loosely follow the second part of the Divine Comedy, Purgatorio, and the sequel to the next game would instead be called Dante's Purgatory. Back in the days of G4 in 2009, the executive producer of Dante's Inferno, Jonathan Knight, was asked about a sequel to Dante's story, and this is what he had to say. Quote, "I posed the question of a sequel to executive producer Jonathan Knight at a recent hands-on demo in Los Angeles, just days before the playable demo goes online. He didn't shy away from acknowledging the challenge in producing another one. For example, there's no second descent into hell. Dante's Inferno is based on the Divine Comedy's first act, Inferno, but the other stories, Purgatorio and Paradiso, seem unlikely candidates for the game." Knight said, quote, "That is a problem that I hope to solve by earning the right to do a follow-up." Now, this question was asked before the original game was even out, so it doesn't surprise me that he really doesn't have any answers, and his primary concern was most likely finishing the game that he had to release in the next year. Then in 2010, Zach Mumbach, a game developer at Visceral Games, was asked by Joystick if we would see a sequel or even a trilogy to the Dante's Inferno saga. His response was, quote, "I'm not sure that if enough people like it. I got $60 for Purgatory or Paradiso, then we would make that game. But I don't know, I don't get to make those decisions." So even though this was a year after the G4 question and 8 months after the release of the game, it still seems like internally they were deciding on whether or not to move forward and see how well the game would sell moving on. Now, fans assume they must have figured out how to write a sequel and how they would modify Paradiso and Purgatory into games, because in 2011, the writer of Assassin's Creed 2, Joshua Rubin, announced in his bio that he was the sole writer for a major unannounced sequel from Visceral Studios at EA Games. Also included in his bio was a hint link which led to the Super Bowl trailer for Dante's Inferno. So this seems like a little over a year after the original. There has already been some early talks and staging on working on this new Dante's Inferno sequel. The story of Purgatorio itself follows the levels of spiritual growth, also known as the 7 deadly sins to most people. So I assume that they most likely personified these sins for each terrace level that Dante would have to climb, and it would be something Dante would have to overcome physically and within. Obviously, that's just speculation, but I think it makes the most sense in how that game could still be interesting and follow the first. Then it was radio silence until 2016, when a user Shinobi602 on Twitter, who hosts a show for the Escapist magazine, made a series of tweets discussing Dante's Inferno 2 and what it was going to be like before it was cancelled. He says, quote, "Sad that Dante's Inferno 2 got cancelled. Was being developed as a grounded action-adventure game than just a focused on hack and slash. This was a while ago too, not recent, 30 FPS with much higher fidelity than 60 FPS. Uncharted/Assassin's Creed climbing type system. Dante was basically going through all of Purgatory and some bits of Hell. He was also going to fight angels as well." Now, all of these seem like pretty safe assumptions most fans could have probably made about the game themselves, but that doesn't necessarily mean that what he's saying is untrue. I tend to believe it, more so for the fact that these tweets were not heavily promoted and there's no real reason to risk your credibility for a game like Dante's Inferno 2. Not that the game isn't important, but just in 2016, it had already been such a distant franchise for most people, they've already forgotten and moved on. Then the final nail in the coffin was in 2017. EA shut down Visceral Games and was combined with another EA ran studio, and it turned into something completely new. Now, EA could still make this sequel happen because they do own the publishing rights as well as owning Visceral Games, technically, but lately it seems like EA has been focusing on games as a service and tends to avoid completely single-player experience games. Now, that doesn't mean it's impossible, but combined with the fact that Dead Space, which was another Visceral-owned property, has also been on hiatus since 2013, I wouldn't hold my breath for a Dante's Inferno sequel until we probably see a new Dead Space. And for the most part, that's why Dante's Inferno 2 was cancelled. It seems like there were internal problems developing the game to begin with, and if the leak is correct, they wanted to take the game in a new direction compared to what the first game was. That combined with the fact that EA was moving away from single-player games and the lackluster recent releases from Visceral Games like Dead Space 3, all form a single picture as to why we never got to see Dante's Purgatory. Now, the last thing I just wanted to mention happened in 2018 and is related to Tal Peleg, who is a senior cinematic animator at Naughty Dog. He revealed that he was a big fan of Visceral Games' Dante Inferno game, and then he made his own trailer for a sequel to the original. The trailer itself now has 1.3 million views on YouTube and should still show that there's a market for a new entry in the Dante series, and that people will always have some recognition with the franchise. Now, this was not created as a teaser to show that they are working on something or maybe a new game is coming, but I wouldn't be surprised if EA is watching to see how fans are reacting to this trailer, and then maybe from there measure if there is a market to continue the series. Obviously, a lot of that speculation. This did happen now almost 2 years ago, so we'll just have to wait and see and if EA decides to bring back this franchise. That's where I'm going to end this video. Make sure to like and share, follow me on Twitter at Fonct2, subscribe for weekly gaming videos, and I will see you guys in the next one.